The warning buoys floated silently at the edge of Sol system, simple metal spheres with blinking lights that seemed laughably primitive to Admiral Zixvar. He stood on the command deck of the Imperial flagship Dominator, his four arms crossed over his chitinous chest as he studied the visual feed. "Magnify that signal," he ordered, his translator converting the clicks and whistles of his native language into the standard Imperial tongue. His communications officer, a tall insectoid with gleaming compound eyes, adjusted the controls. The message repeated itself across every screen on the bridge. Sol system and Earth closed to Imperial vessels by order of Human Defense Authority. Unauthorized entry will be met with force. Zixvar's mandibles clicked rapidly, the equivalent of scornful laughter among his species. These humans have barely left their own moon, and they presume to deny entry to the Imperial fleet. Scan the system for defenses. Lieutenant Carthal ran the scans from her station, antenna twitching with concentration. Minimal orbital installations detected, Admiral. Some primitive satellites, a small station near their moon, and these warning buoys. No energy signatures suggesting advanced weaponry. As expected, Zixvar said. He paced the bridge, his clawed feet clicking against the polished floor. The Empire had conquered over 300 worlds in the last millennium. Each new species followed the same pattern: initial resistance, quick subjugation, then acceptance of their place within the galactic hierarchy. "Send the standard first contact package," he ordered. "Inform them of their options." Minutes passed as the message traveled at light speed toward the third planet. The bridge crew waited, some with boredom, others with the excited anticipation of adding another conquest to their records. The response came faster than expected. A simple text message: Imperial assimilation rejected. Sol system is sovereign territory. This is your final warning. They rejected the standard terms. Captain Vreen asked, her scales flushing blue with surprise. Most species at least negotiate. Admiral Zixvar flicked his upper limb dismissively. It changes nothing. Prepare a scout vessel to breach their system. Let's see if these humans can back up their bold words. On Earth, in a deep underground facility beneath the American Rocky Mountains, Chief Analyst Frank Bennett watched the Imperial communications with growing tension. He turned to his supervisor, Director Kate Wilson. "They're sending in a scout ship, exactly as predicted." Director Wilson nodded, her gray eyes never leaving the holographic display showing the positions of the Imperial vessels. "How many ships in their fleet?" "Sensors detect 27 vessels in their vanguard, with indications of more following behind. Standard Imperial invasion force." Wilson pressed a button on her console. "All stations, this is Director Wilson. The Empire has rejected our warning. Implement Protocol Porcupine. I repeat, implement Protocol Porcupine." Throughout the solar system, hidden facilities powered up. On Mars, beneath the dusty surface of Phobos, inside asteroids and comets, and in Earth orbit, systems that had been waiting for decades activated. Back on the Dominator, Admiral Zixvar watched as the scout ship accelerated toward the inner system. "Scout Vessel Seeker reports no resistance," Lieutenant Carthal announced. "They've passed the orbit of the planet these humans call Neptune." "Of course not," the Admiral said. "Their technology is primitive. Our intelligence suggests they've only recently discovered faster-than-light communication and have no FTL travel capabilities." Captain Vreen approached cautiously. "Admiral, perhaps we should consider a more diplomatic approach. The database indicates humans are unusually adaptable and—" "The Empire does not adapt to primitives," Zixvar interrupted. "They adapt to us. This will be a routine assimilation." As the scout ship passed Uranus, hidden sensors tracked its every movement. In her office, Director Wilson received the confirmation she had been waiting for. "The scout has crossed the outer threshold," her assistant reported. "Shall we activate the first layer?" Wilson stared at the display for a long moment. Humanity had prepared for this day for generations. What they did next would change the course of human history forever. Activated, she said quietly. Let's show them why Earth is forbidden. Council Overlord Kathum slammed his massive appendage against the conference table, causing the holographic displays to flicker. The assembled Imperial High Command flinched at the display of anger, except for Admiral Zixfar, who remained motionless. Preposterous, Kathum bellowed, his voice echoing through the chamber. You mean to tell me that our scout ship was destroyed by these primitives? Admiral Zixfar clicked his mandibles nervously. The scout ship reported unusual energy readings just before communication was lost. We believe the humans have some form of defensive technology we hadn't anticipated. Kathum's 6 eyes narrowed to slits. Impossible. Our intelligence indicates they have barely achieved interplanetary travel. They have no colonies beyond their moon. How could they develop weapons capable of destroying our vessels? From the far end of the table, a human figure rose. Ambassador Leela Patil, one of the few humans who had accepted imperial citizenship years ago when a small diplomatic mission made first contact, cleared her throat. If I may, Overlord, she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. My reports on human resilience and adaptability have been consistent. My people prepare for threats they cannot yet see. It is woven into our history. Kathum waved dismissively. Your reports were considered exaggerations, Ambassador. No species develops defensive capabilities before encountering external threats. Humans do, Patil insisted. We call it science fiction. For centuries, humans have imagined alien invasions and prepared accordingly. Laughter erupted around the table, a cacophony of different sounds from various species. Admiral Zixfar did not join in the mockery. He had seen the recording from the scout ship before it was destroyed. Kathum silenced the laughter with a gesture. Enough. I will not tolerate this insult to imperial authority. We offered these humans the generous opportunity to join our civilization, to receive our protection and guidance. They not only reject us, but dare to destroy imperial property. He turned to Admiral Zixfar. Mobilize the imperial fleet. Not just your vanguard. I want 50 warships. Make an example of Earth. Show the galaxy what happens to those who resist imperial benevolence. As you command, Overlord, Zixfar said, bowing deeply. Ambassador Patil stepped forward. Please, Overlord, I beg you to reconsider, if you would just open diplomatic channels again. Your advice is no longer required. Ambassador, Kathum said coldly. In fact, your loyalty to the Empire seems questionable. Guards, detain Ambassador Patil until this matter is resolved. 2 armored guards moved to Patil's side, gripping her arms. As they led her away, she called out, You're making a terrible mistake. Humans don't fight like other species. Meanwhile, billions of kilometers away, Captain John Moore of Earth Intelligence sat in a darkened control room, watching intercepted Imperial transmissions with grim satisfaction. They took the bait, he said to no one in particular. Lieutenant Diane Foster looked up from her monitoring station. The loss of our drone was worth it then. Moore nodded. The drone was designed to look like a small scout ship. Its destruction convinced them we have only limited defensive capabilities. And now they're sending 50 warships instead of just the initial 27, Foster said, her voice concerned. Exactly as we wanted, Moore replied. If they had just sent the vanguard, some might have escaped to warn the Empire about our true capabilities. This way, we can demonstrate our power once and for all. Across his desk, holographic displays showed Imperial warships gathering at the edge of the Sol system. They would arrive within days, expecting an easy victory against a primitive species. Send word to General Wright, Moore ordered. Tell him the Empire has taken the bait. We're moving to Phase 2. Foster nodded, sending the encrypted message through quantum channels that the Empire couldn't detect. The trap was set, and humanity was ready to reveal just how forbidden Earth truly was. Lieutenant Susan Carter sat at her command station in Lunar Base Alpha, watching the holographic display as 50 Imperial warships breached the asteroid belt. The soft blue glow of the screen illuminated her face in the dimly lit command center. Her fingers hovered over the activation controls. "They're in position," announced Sergeant Peter Hill from the sensor station. "All 50 ships have passed the designated threshold." Carter nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. Her station was buried deep beneath the lunar surface, hidden from Imperial scans. For decades, Earth had prepared for this moment. Scientists working in secret had developed technology that would change the course of human history. "Status of the grid?" she asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "All nodes reporting green," Hill replied. "The entire system is ready for activation." Carter pressed her palm against the biometric scanner. "General Wright, this is Lieutenant Carter at Lunar Base Alpha. Imperial fleet has entered the inner system, requesting permission to activate the planetary defense grid." General Alan Wright's voice came through clearly from Earth Command. "Permission granted, Lieutenant. Make it happen." Carter took a deep breath and pressed the activation sequence, initiating quantum barrier in 3, 2, 1, now. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, across the holographic display, thousands of previously invisible nodes lit up throughout the inner solar system. Energy flowed between them, creating a vast network that encompassed Earth, the Moon, Mars, and everything in between. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, Admiral Zixvar watched in confusion as his sensor officers suddenly began shouting. "Admiral, energy readings are spiking throughout the system," cried the chief sensor officer, his compound eyes reflecting the flashing red alerts on his console. "What kind of energy?" "Weapons," demanded Zixvar. Before the officer could answer, a shimmering wall of energy materialized directly in front of their ship. It wasn't just in front of them. The tactical display showed the energy field forming a complete sphere around the inner planets of the system. "Impossible," whispered Zixvar. "No primitive species could generate a field this large." He recovered quickly. "Fire all weapons. Break through that barrier." The Imperial warships unleashed their full arsenal. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and graviton missiles struck the quantum barrier simultaneously. The barrier absorbed each impact, glowing brighter with each hit. Then, to the horror of the Imperial crews, the energy began to flow along the barrier's surface, gathering at specific points. Back at Lunar Base Alpha, Lieutenant Carter watched with satisfaction. "The barrier is holding. Energy absorption at 93% efficiency. They're firing everything they have," said Hill, monitoring the Imperial fleet's actions. "Should we begin the redirection sequence?" Carter nodded. "Activate the counterattack protocols." On her command, the absorbed energy from the Imperial weapons began to concentrate at specific nodes within the barrier. Suddenly, powerful beams of the Empire's own energy shot back at their ships, striking with pinpoint accuracy. 3 Imperial vessels exploded immediately. Several others spun out of control, their propulsion systems damaged. Admiral Zixvar stared in disbelief. "Cease fire. Cease all weapons fire immediately." Too late, he realized what was happening. The humans hadn't just created a defensive shield. They had built a weapon that turned an attacker's own power against them. "How is this possible?" demanded the Admiral's second-in-command. "Our intelligence said they had no advanced technology." Zixvar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Clearly, our intelligence was wrong." In Earth Command, General Wright watched the same scene unfold. He turned to his communications officer. "Signal General Rivera. Tell him the barrier is operational and effective. He may deploy the drones." The officer nodded. "Yes, sir." Wright looked back at the display showing the confused Imperial fleet. Some ships were attempting to retreat, while others continued to fire uselessly at the barrier, only to have their energy turned back against them. "They thought we were defenseless," Wright said quietly. "They're about to learn just how wrong they were." General Alan Wright stood before the massive wall of screens in Earth Command, his weathered face illuminated by their blue glow. The Imperial ships were regrouping after their initial shock, forming a defensive formation. He knew they wouldn't retreat. The Empire never retreated. They would adapt and attack again. "It's time," Wright said, his voice calm but firm. "Release the drones." His executive officer nodded and spoke into her headset. "This is Earth Command. Authorization code Sierra, Echo 9. Deploy all drone units." Throughout the solar system, hidden compartments opened in asteroids, abandoned mining stations, and artificial comets. Thousands of small metallic objects emerged from their hiding places, dormant systems coming to life after years of waiting. On the Imperial flagship, a junior officer approached Admiral Zixbar nervously. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple small objects emerging throughout the system." "What kind of objects?" Zixbar asked, his tone sharp with frustration. "Unknown, sir. They appear to be automated vessels. Small, approximately 5 meters in length. They're moving toward our fleet." The tactical display updated, showing swarms of tiny craft approaching from all directions. Zixbar felt his first twinge of genuine fear. "How many?" The officer hesitated. "Current count is over 8,000, sir, and rising." The bridge fell silent. Even the Empire rarely deployed more than a few hundred automated attack craft at once. "Impossible," someone whispered. The drones accelerated, their propulsion systems suddenly flaring with a familiar energy signature. Zixbar recognized it immediately. "Those are Imperial drive systems," he exclaimed. "How do they have our technology?" In a hidden facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Nathan Kelly watched the deployment with satisfaction. For 20 years, he had led the team that reverse-engineered the technology from a crashed Imperial scout ship. The vessel had arrived decades before the official first contact, its pilot likely a rogue explorer. Earth governments had kept it secret, using its technology to prepare for the day the Empire inevitably came in force. The first wave of drones reached the Imperial fleet. Unlike typical attack craft, these didn't fire weapons. Instead, they attached themselves to the hulls of the larger ships, drilling through the outer armor with remarkable ease. "What are they doing?" demanded Zixbar as alarms blared across his ship. "They're breaching our hulls," reported the security chief. "And, sir, they seem to know exactly where our critical systems are located." Of course they did. The drones had been programmed with complete schematics of Imperial vessels, targeting engine rooms, weapon systems, and life support with surgical precision. Back in Earth Command, General Wright addressed his staff. "The Empire has always relied on overwhelming force and technological superiority. They conquer species that are still figuring out radio waves or just beginning space exploration." He gestured to the screen showing Imperial ships now frantically firing at the swarms of drones. They never expected to face an enemy who had studied them in secret for generations, who had prepared specifically for this confrontation. On the Imperial flagship, chaos reigned. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated as drones disabled key systems. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in red. 30% of the fleet is disabled," reported an officer, her voice shaking. Another 20% reporting critical damage. Admiral Zixbar made a difficult decision. "Signal all vessels. Prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace." "Sir, we can't just leave our disabled ships." "We have no choice," snapped Zixbar. "The Empire must know what we've encountered here." But as the remaining ships attempted to engage their faster-than-light drives, they discovered another unpleasant surprise. The quantum barrier extended its influence into hyperspace, preventing any jumps within its radius. "We're trapped," Zixbar realized. In Earth Command, General Wright gave a grim nod of satisfaction. "Begin Phase 3, he ordered. "Prepare the boarding parties. It's time we acquired some Imperial technology that wasn't from a crashed scout ship." Commander Laura Martinez and her Special Operations team were already suiting up, preparing to board the Imperial flagship and claim the greatest intelligence prize in human history. Commander Laura Martinez checked her oxygen level 1 last time as the transport shuttle approached the Imperial flagship. Through the viewport, she could see the massive vessel listing to one side, emergency lights flashing along its hull. Human drones had disabled its main systems, but carefully left life support intact. 2 minutes to boarding, announced the pilot. Looks like our drones have secured the main hangar bay. Martinez turned to her team of 12 special operations soldiers. They wore advanced space combat suits, reverse-engineered from Imperial technology, but enhanced with human innovations. Each carried non-lethal weapons. The mission was to capture, not kill. Remember your objectives, Martinez said firmly. We need their database intact. Intelligence believes the ship will have a self-destruct sequence. We must secure the main computer core before they can activate it. The team nodded. They had trained for this mission for years, using simulations based on a crashed scout ship. 30 seconds, called the pilot. Martinez felt her heart racing. Human beings were about to board an alien warship for the first time in history, not as prisoners or supplicants, but as conquerors. The shuttle landed with a soft thud in the Imperial hangar bay. As the doors opened, Martinez led her team out in perfect formation, weapons ready. The hangar was mostly empty. The Empire had never expected to need to defend their ships from internal threats. "Hull clear," reported Sergeant Eric Powell, her second in command. Life signs indicate most of the crew has retreated to the central sections. Martinez nodded. "Move out. Formation Delta." They advanced through the curved corridors of the ship, encountering minimal resistance. Most of the Imperial crew they encountered were technicians or support staff, not soldiers. They surrendered quickly when faced with humans in advanced combat gear. They never expected to be boarded, Powell observed as they secured another junction. The Empire always attacks. They're not prepared to defend. 20 minutes into the mission, they reached the ship's central computer core, a massive room filled with glowing crystalline structures. 2 Imperial officers stood at the main console, frantically entering commands. "Stop," ordered Martinez, her weapon trained on them. "Step away from the console." The officers turned, their alien faces showing what Martinez interpreted as shock. One reached for a sidearm. Sergeant Powell fired a stun round, dropping the armed officer. The other raised his upper limbs in surrender. The console, Martinez ordered her tech specialist, Private Olivia Gray. "Are they activating the self-destruct?" Gray rushed to the alien interface, connecting a translation device. "Yes, Commander. They've initiated the sequence. We have 6 minutes. Can you stop it?" Gray's fingers flew over her device. "Working on it. These systems are similar to what we studied, but more advanced." 4 tense minutes passed as Gray worked, bypassing security protocols while the rest of the team secured the room and began downloading data. "Got it," Gray finally exclaimed. Self-destruct aborted. A collective sigh of relief passed through the team. Martinez activated her comm unit. "Earth Command, this is Martinez. We've secured the primary objective. Computer core is intact." "Excellent work, Commander," came General Wright's voice. "What's the status of the data retrieval?" "In progress," Martinez replied, watching as her team connected storage devices to the Imperial systems. "We should have complete access to their database within." She stopped as Private Gray gasped, staring at her screen. "Commander, you need to see this." Martinez moved to Gray's position, looking at the translated data streaming across the display. Her blood ran cold as she understood what she was seeing. "Earth Command," she said slowly, "we've found something disturbing. The Empire. They've done this before. Many times. There are records of dozens of species who refused Imperial protection. All of them exterminated." There was silence on the channel for a moment. Then General Wright spoke, his voice grave. "Download everything, Commander. Every record, every detail. The galaxy needs to know the truth." Martinez looked around at the alien technology surrounding them, at the evidence of countless genocides. "The truth is more disturbing than we expected, sir. But we have something those other species didn't." "What's that, Commander?" "We were prepared," Martinez said. "And now we have the evidence to make sure the Empire can never do this again." Governor Richard Hayes adjusted his formal Earth Alliance uniform as he waited to be announced. The vast chamber of the Galactic Congress stretched before him, filled with representatives from over 300 worlds. Most had never seen a human in person before. "The Congress recognizes Governor Richard Hayes of Earth," announced the speaker, a tall, crystalline being whose voice resonated through the chamber. Hayes stepped forward to the central platform. He could feel the tension in the room. Just 2 weeks ago, humans had been considered primitives, barely worth the Empire's attention. Now they have destroyed or captured half of an Imperial battle fleet. "Distinguished representatives," Hayes began, his voice clear and strong. "I come before you today not as a conqueror, but as a liberator." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Imperial representatives, seated in their privileged positions at the front, rose in protest. "This is outrageous," declared the Imperial Prime Minister, his forearms gesturing wildly. "These humans are not members of the Congress. They have attacked Imperial vessels without provocation." The speaker's crystalline form flickered with blue light, a sign of annoyance. "The emergency session procedures allow for non-member testimony when it concerns galactic security. Governor Hayes has been granted temporary speaking rights." Hayes nodded thanks to the speaker and continued. "For those who have not yet seen the evidence, I present to you the Imperial truth." With a gesture, he activated the holographic projector. Above the chamber, images appeared. Planets burning, species being systematically exterminated, all taken directly from the Imperial flagship's records. "These are not our images," Hayes explained as shocked gasps filled the room. "These are the Empire's own records, their own documentation of what happens to those who refuse to submit." The Imperial representatives shouted objections, but they were drowned out by the cries of horror from other delegates as they recognized worlds and species long thought lost to natural disasters or civil wars. "The Zenari," whispered one delegate, pointing to a recording of a peaceful aquatic species being wiped out. "We were told they destroyed themselves in a resource war." "The Empire has maintained its power through fear and deception," Hayes continued. "Those who joined willingly were allowed to live. Those who resisted were eliminated, and their stories rewritten." He paused, letting the images continue to play. Earth was supposed to be next on this list. We refused their offer of protection because we recognized it for what it was: subjugation. The Imperial Prime Minister finally managed to restore order among his delegation. "These are clever forgeries, primitive human propaganda." Hayes smiled slightly. "The Imperial databases use quantum encryption you claim is impossible to forge. You're right, we couldn't have created these files. They're authentic, and every technical expert in this Congress knows it." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Many worlds had joined the Empire willingly, believing the alternative was isolation, not extermination. "The Human Alliance offers a different path," Hayes said, his voice now softer but still carrying to every corner of the chamber. "We offer protection and partnership to any world wishing freedom from Imperial control." He activated another hologram, showing the quantum barrier technology. "Our shield technology can be adapted to protect your planets. Our drones can defend your systems. Our only demand is autonomy for all sentient species." The Imperial delegation erupted in outrage, but Hayes noted with satisfaction that many other representatives were leaning forward with interest. "This is sedition," the Imperial Prime Minister shouted. "The Empire has maintained peace for 1,000 years. Peace through genocide is not peace," Hayes replied firmly. "It is just slow-motion war." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many different species as possible. "Today, each of you faces a choice. Continue under Imperial rule, knowing what that really means, or join the alliance of free worlds." The chamber erupted in chaos as centuries of Imperial domination faced its first serious challenge. Delegates rushed to communicate with their homeworlds. Imperial representatives threatened economic sanctions and worse. Above it all, the speaker called for order, its crystalline form now glowing white, a sign of historic change. Hayes stepped back from the platform, his formal message delivered. Now the real work would begin. Humanity had thrown a stone into the still pond of galactic politics, and the ripples would reach every corner of known space. Captain Olivia Nelson stood on the bridge of the UES Peacekeeper, watching as the diplomatic vessel approached the newly established neutral zone. 5 years had passed since Earth had shocked the galaxy by defeating an Imperial fleet and exposing centuries of Imperial atrocities. "Status report," she requested, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "All systems normal, Captain," reported her first officer, Commander Ben Garcia. "We're being tracked by 3 different defense networks, but that's to be expected in the neutral zone." Nelson nodded. The galaxy had changed dramatically in 5 years. Where once the Galactic Empire had ruled unchallenged across thousands of light years, now 3 distinct power blocks existed in an uneasy balance. "Put the current galactic map on the main screen," she ordered. The view screen shifted from the starfield to a political map. 1/3 of the former empire, shown in blue, had joined the human-led alliance of free worlds. Another third, in red, remained loyal to the weakened empire. The rest, displayed in green, had declared independence as the Neutral Systems Confederation. "Hard to believe it all changed so quickly," Garcia commented. "Not quickly enough for some," Nelson replied, thinking of the billions who had lived and died under Imperial rule without ever knowing freedom. The ship's communication officer interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Imperial Border Station 12. They're requesting our identification and purpose." "Standard procedure," Nelson said with a nod. "Send them our diplomatic registry and inform them we're en route to the conference on Antares IV." She watched as the massive Imperial station came into view. Once, such stations had been symbols of absolute power. Now this one was understaffed and showing signs of neglect. The Empire couldn't maintain its infrastructure with 1/3 of its tax base gone. "They've acknowledged our transmission and granted passage," the communications officer reported. "They sound unhappy about it." Nelson smiled slightly. "They're always unhappy to see us." The Peacekeeper continued on its journey, passing from Imperial space into the neutral zone. Here, ships from all 3 power blocks mingled cautiously. Trade was slowly resuming after years of tension. "Captain," Garcia said, pointing to a small object on their long-range sensors. "Look at that." Nelson recognized the design immediately. "One of our warning buoys. It must have drifted from Sol system." "Should we recover it?" asked Garcia. "No," Nelson decided after a moment. "Let's see what it's broadcasting." The communications officer tapped her console. "Audio coming through now, Captain." A simple message played through the bridge speakers. "Earth welcomes peaceful visitors from all non-Imperial worlds. Please transmit identification and intentions before proceeding." Nelson felt a swell of pride. The warning buoys still orbited Sol system, but their message had changed from a universal prohibition to a conditional welcome. Earth was no longer hiding, it was leading. "Set course for Antares IV," she ordered. "We have a peace conference to attend." As the Peacekeeper jumped to FTL speed, Nelson thought about how much had changed. Humanity had gone from an isolated species on a single planet to the leaders of a galactic alliance in less than a decade. The technology they had developed in secret was now being shared with allies, strengthening dozens of worlds against future threats. The Imperial ambassador would be at the conference, probably making the same demands as always, that Earth return the captured ships and technology, that the rebel worlds rejoin the Empire. She would refuse, as always, and offer the same alternative, that the Empire join the Alliance as equals, not rulers. One day, they might accept. The younger generation of Imperial citizens was growing up in a different galaxy, one where Imperial propaganda couldn't hide the truth. They were asking questions their parents never dared to ask. As her ship traveled faster than light toward yet another diplomatic mission, Captain Nelson reflected on the lesson the galaxy had learned. Never underestimate a supposedly primitive species. Sometimes the quiet ones were just waiting, watching, and preparing for their moment to change everything. The Empire had sought to conquer Earth. Instead, Earth had transformed the Empire. The sign at the edge of Sol system had said it all. Entry forbidden. But what it really meant was tyranny forbidden. And that message was spreading across the stars.